Hi, my name is Rod and welcome to the Orca Boat Shop. I do repairs, restorations on small wooden boats, build new boats, and sell online lots of parts and pieces for home builders who are doing either new builds or restorations of their own. So please check us out on the website at orcaboats.ca with a link right down there in the description. While the cockpit lip is being glued on to the boat itself, got a few other things I can make. First off being the recess fitting. So I've just got a piece of Paduke here. I'm going to work my way down the end and I'm going to plunger out it's basically some small little cups in here, which will be for recess fittings. I've set the plunge to go down 3/4 of an inch, and the bit that's in there is a 1 inch. Then just using my finger as a guide, I'm just going to roughly mark a circle around the outside here. This is just, again, a rough estimate. Once I cut the holes in the deck, these will be sanded down on the disc sander to fit into the actual hole. I've cut them all out roughly on the bandsaw, and I'm just checking them over here. One of them here has a bit of I think the router bit sort of grabbed and bit. It's very rough inside there. I think I'll put that one aside, but all the rest of them are pretty smooth inside there. So next will be to just clean them out and start coating them inside with epoxy. We'll get a couple of coats inside and then drill a hole for the brass rod, then shape them and install them in the deck. The goal here will be to put multiple thin coats of epoxy rather than try to saturate. It's all just going to run down into the bottom, which is fine, but I don't need to have the bottom filled with epoxy too much. Next step in making the recess fittings is to make these nice and round to fit in this round hole. So we're taking a square peg and fitting it in a round hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and lay it over top of the hole and draw. Once I've got the circle drawn, sort of centered on the actual hole, I'm going to take it to my disc sander. I got a nice, very coarse, new sandpaper in here at 80 grit, and I've got the table tilted slightly downwards so that we'll end up creating a small cup with a bit of a tapered bottom, so that this is going to go into the hole nice and tightly. And I'll use my sample piece here to just make sure that that's exactly what's going to happen, is that this is going to fit right down. And it's not going to go perfectly flush. This is flat. The deck is round, so it's got to get pretty close so that I can sand these smooth with the rest of the deck. For the rod across the recess fittings, I'm just going to cut some 3/16 brass rod. And I'll just clean up any burrs on the edge here on my belt sander. Now it's time to map out where all the fittings will go. So the things to consider will be, there's going to be some foot pedals down in here. I don't want them too low down to the shear. That may interfere with people's feet. And I'm also going to have a bulkhead in here as close to this front hatch as possible. So I can't have that in the way of the bulkhead going in. So we're going to need to determine the total length here is 20 inches. So let's say the first one goes at 1.5 inches, and the last one is going to go at say 16. Now we're going to need to put halfway between that, so it's 14.5, so 7.25 is the distance. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equidistance from there, and I'll do the same on the back. Then the other option is, do I make them equidistance up from the shear so that when the pattern comes in, the bungee is going to run along the shear, or do I make them equidistance out from the center so that the bungee forms a square across? I kind of like the equidistance up from the shear myself, so the bungee will be wider, longer across here, a little less and a little less. So again, like I said, I don't want them interfering with foot pedals that will be down here with sticking straight out. So let's say we go with 4 inches up from shear. What I need to first do is determine sort of out square from center line. So if that's the center line, marking on that point there, somewhere down in here, this one is going to be right there. Before I commit to drilling holes in here, I like to just think about this for a little bit. Is there anything I'm forgetting? Bulkhead up here, foot pedals down here, equidistance, so this will follow the shear line. I'm committed now. With all the holes drilled from the outside, halfway through the 1/4 inch cedar, I now come to the inside and we'll punch it out. So this I want to go slow, so I don't want to tear any wood out the outside as well. The nice thing too about coming from both sides is the piece that comes out of here doesn't end up stuck inside the drill bit itself. I have all the brass rods in the fittings, and I have made sure they all fit where I want them to fit, and so I'm just going to take them out now. I'm going to add a little bit of thickened epoxy around the top edge here so that as I push it in, the filler will come to the top of the deck, which will get sanded off. So with the brass rod in place, I'm going to position these so that the brass rod is perpendicular to the center line. I think that's going to work a little better as far as putting the bungees across. I can just clean up some of that stuff that's squeezing out, less sanding tomorrow. And again, as always, thank you very much for watching. And hey, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and maybe consider becoming a subscriber, because lots of videos coming out of the shop as new builds happen and restorations are undertaken.